Some huge betting line movement here on Cotton Bowl game day. What does it mean for the Buckeyes and the Tigers? Does it mean Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to suit up? Well, let's talk about all this and more right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And just as a quick little PSA here, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the game is on ESPN tonight, the big ESPN at 7 p.m. And if you happen to be in your car needing to listen to the game, well, you can check it out, the SiriusXM app or channel 190 for Chris Gervino and Mike Kelly. But you know what? Some really interesting betting line movement today for the Cotton Bowl. Woke up this morning and, well, the line had moved up a full point. Ohio State 4.5-point favorites. Well, just before I push record here, it's now a 5.5 ball game here, according to my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. And I got to be honest, I'm really surprised by that heavy amount of line movement coming into the game. What would you expect this to mean? That's the big question. Well, I think a lot of people are going, does this indicate that Marvin Harrison Jr., the stud, top 5, top 10 NFL draft pick likely here coming up this 2024, does this mean he's actually going to suit up in this ball game? Well, I got to say, if that happens, that would be really odd to me, because every indication we've had coming out of Ohio State is that Marvin Harrison is not going to play in this ball game. Now, the wide receivers coach, Brian Hartline, I've done some sleuthing here for you all here this morning on this, and Brian Hartline, again, the receivers coach, said, hey, how do you know Marvin's not playing? I don't know. I guess we'll just have to find out on Friday, reportedly with a sly smile, according to the newspaper here. He said, quote, Coach Day can hit on that when you guys ask. So a little bit wily there from Brian Hartline. And really the main thing is we can listen to these guys BS us all day if we want. How do we know if we can only guess if they're telling the truth or not. But something a little more tangible is whether or not Marvin Harrison Jr. actually practiced, to me. And so far, all indications are he has not practiced. Now, he's been at practice. He's maybe stretched a little bit, that kind of deal, maybe gone through warm-ups. Hey, he's putting some work in on that training bike. The Peloton is getting some time with Marvin Harrison Jr.'s backside. But honestly, if they were even thinking about playing Harrison this week, wouldn't you at least put him in a green jersey or a yellow jersey, whatever color it means, don't touch this guy in practice, and have him run through the offense, run through the game plan and all that kind of stuff, get comfortable with the new quarterback here, Devin Brown, after, of course, this year's starter, Kyle McCord, transferred to Syracuse. So to me, if Harrison Jr. plays here, that makes little to no sense. Quite honestly, maybe he just wakes up this morning and just decides, damn it, I want to suit up and play. That's possible. It just seems really unlikely to me. What seems more likely is that maybe some of the sharps, as it were, the professional bettors this past week or so, started taking a closer look at this Missouri and Ohio State game. And on paper, certainly if you look at the advanced statistics or even just the win-loss record, on paper, Ohio State is the better ball club. So if you can just look past the question marks at quarterback, and again, Devin Brown, a guy who's going to have a few weeks now of reps with the first team and under his belt. It's not as though you're in the Florida State situation where essentially you have 1 week to break in your third string quarterback with reps, a true freshman at that. Well, Devin Brown's been around this program longer than that. And by the way, if you actually dig a little deeper, you start to think, if you look at Ohio State's movements in the transfer portal this offseason, it is notable to say that Ohio State has not gotten a quarterback in the transfer portal yet, and haven't been a lot of rumors of anybody linked to the Buckeyes other than Kansas State's Will Howard, quite honestly. He follows quite a few current Ohio State Buckeyes on social media now, but I got to say it's interesting to me that Will Howard has not settled on a landing spot yet, because generally speaking, if you're a starting quarterback at a Power 5 school, especially a top 25 caliber team like Kansas State was this past season, well, it's interesting. Those guys usually kind of know where they're going to go before they even enter the portal. They don't stay in the portal very long. Kyle McCord, a great example of this. He didn't stay in the portal very long. It didn't take him long to settle on Syracuse. Now, a lot of people are going to be yelling, tampering right now. And I get it. You might have a point, but I'm just saying this is a very obviously observable pattern. And also interesting, hey, Kansas State did win their bowl game yesterday, the Pop-Tart Bowl, without Will Howard. So maybe Will Howard isn't all he's cracked up to be. That's the hard part about quarterback evaluation, especially in college. It's really tough to separate a quarterback from his offense and from the team that's around him, the receivers, the running game, the offensive line, and everything. And I got to give Chris Kleiman a lot of credit. I think he's one of the best in the country right now at designing a really good offense. So anyway, that was a bit more of a Will Howard tangent that I meant to get into. But again, the point of all this is to say that I think maybe Ohio State, at least Ryan Day, is at least giving the idea that, hey, Devin Brown's got a real chance to start for the 2024 Ohio State Buckeyes. And you know what? Speaking of the 24 Ohio State Buckeyes, the more you look at the depth chart for this team, this is definitely not going to be a skeleton crew of guys hamstrung by, say, NFL declarations, guys going to the pros, and guys hitting the transfer portal. Just not maybe as much of that as you would have expected maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. If you look at like Florida State and Georgia, their rosters coming up, well, there's a lot of important guys from the 2023 season, the regular season, who are not going to be a part of the postseason for those two major schools in a New Year's Six bowl game. And outside of the playoff, you do see a lot of opt-outs. But really for Missouri and Ohio State right now, obviously the Ohio State passing game is a legitimate question mark with the new quarterback, probably without Marvin Harrison Jr. and another receiver as well. Julian Fleming is also out. But as Jay Stevens told me on my crossover episode this past week, he isn't as big of a part of the offense as maybe it's been made out to be in the Missouri media. But again, the defense for Ohio State, though, that is mostly intact. Although Tommy Eichenberg, his status up in the air, according to their defensive coordinator. Eichenberg, a star linebacker for Ohio State, though I get the feeling that their backups, Ohio State, not terribly worried about Eichenberg, perhaps. Again, a guy who's a big name, but Ohio State seems to be okay at that position. At least they think that they'll be. Again, this is basically going to be the 2024 Ohio State Buckeyes in the bowl game here. I'm pretty sure that the 2024 Buckeyes will be a top 10 team in, say, the preseason Associated Press poll. I think that's pretty conservative, in fact. So lest you think this game is any type of pushover, it's not going to be, and the betting line obviously reflects that. But you know what? Even in the unlikely event that Marvin Harrison Jr. plays in the Cotton Bowl tonight, the question still will remain, can Devin Brown get him the ball? So let's talk about that Ohio State passing game and why I'm still leaning toward picking the Tigers tonight in Dallas. But first, I want to tell you about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die vehicle alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, For your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. That's Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. And again, even if Marvin Harrison Jr. decides to sit up for this game, hey, Brian Hartline keeps saying, hey, he's ready to roll if we ask him to play. Well, honestly, I don't think they're going to ask him to play. It's probably going to be up to old Marvin Harrison Jr., I would say. But again, if he plays, can Devin Brown get him the ball? That's the question. Well, I will say this. One reason why I'm still feeling confident about Missouri, there's a few reasons, actually, but one of them is actually based on an anecdotal observation, which is that, quite honestly, Jay Stevens, again, Locked On Buckeyes host, he and I had a great time this past week. I was really surprised when Jay actually picked Missouri to win this ball game because, again, this is an anecdotal observation. Hey, on one hand, he's just one guy, right? Who cares? Even the smartest football mind in the world gets picks wrong all the time. However, having said that, from my admittedly, again, anecdotal experience, it's rather rare for the hometown Locked On podcast host to pick against his team if the spread is within a touchdown or so, certainly within a field goal. And, well, it's now moving up, obviously. At the time we record the podcast, Missouri was maybe a 1.5 point favorite. I can't even remember. Maybe Ohio State was favored by 1.5 points at that point. But so obviously there's been a lot of changes since Jay and I recorded that show about a week ago. But again, just for example, I can only think of really one time where I've picked against the Tigers, at least in the Drinkwitz era. I've actually gone back to the last year of Odom as a podcaster, by the way. I think I may have picked against them against Vanderbilt, perhaps, when things would really gone off the rails in that season. But really the only example I can think of where I personally picked against the Tigers, where it was certainly close to a field goal spread, was against Kansas State this season. And I turned out to be wrong, of course. So I'm kind of going against my point here. The point is, for Jay Stevens, it wasn't just that he picked against Ohio State. It's that he wasn't very confident in Devin Brown, the quarterback, either. And I just think he's got a lot more insight than what I do on this. So I'm going to lean towards his knowledge on maybe not expecting the Ohio State passing game to be quite up to snuff. So again, the Buckeyes are not going to be a pushover here. I don't think anybody expects that. Beyond the passing game, of course, you've just got the simple question of motivation. And I'm not even sure I totally 100% buy that narrative. I think the Buckeyes who play in this ball game are going to be individually motivated for sure. But collectively, it is fair to question, will they be as motivated as Missouri, especially maybe if things don't get off to the best start. We've seen Missouri get off to bad starts and rally for victories. Will Ohio State be able to do that this season? Because that Michigan loss was basically their entire season. That's the mentality in Columbus right now. If they don't, it basically is every season, right? But especially right now they've lost, I believe, 3 in a row to Jim Harbaugh and Michigan. And it wasn't just that they lost. It was how they got lost. They got worked over in the trenches, physically dominated by Michigan. And that's pretty embarrassing for Ohio State. It just is. So you just have to wonder where their mentality is as a ball club right now. Quite honestly, if you think about that Ohio State defense, I think Eichenberg has gotten a lot of headlines because of his elbow injury and his questionable status for the Cotton Bowl. But to me, maybe the headliner really is cornerback Denzel Burke, who we've known for weeks now is going to be playing in this ball game, and he headlines what is clearly an excellent Ohio State secondary. Some really good corners, and this is going to be an excellent challenge for what's a really good Missouri wide receiver core, including Luther Burden III, of course. But to me, actually offensively, what I'm really going to be watching for here, because, Brady Cook and Missouri, their passing game this year, they've had plenty of just tremendous moments of excellence, but some occasional moments of struggle too. And I can definitely see that potentially happening against Ohio State tonight. So to me, Cody Schrader and the Missouri offensive line and that running game, their success is going to be paramount. And actually, again, Michigan showed that you can run on the Buckeyes a little bit if you've got the horses. And I think Missouri showed that they can run the football against just about anybody this season. So if Missouri can be successful running that football in this ball game, especially in the first half, if they get it going, just, it doesn't have to be busting huge yards, but as long as they're moving the chains, maybe getting 4.5 yards a carry or so in the first half, I think maybe second half you could see Schrader start breaking some big runs as he has in many of these second halves in 2023, maybe get up to 6.5 yards a carry or so in the second. Look for that to see if Missouri strengthens as the game goes on. And of course, by now you can probably tell where I'm leaning in terms of the point spread. Yes, I'm going to take the 5.5 if I'm a Missouri fan here, or just frankly, an objective bettor and odds maker at this point. I just think this game is much more of a toss-up than an Ohio State favored by 5.5. That's just my viewing of the whole thing. But you know what? I got a couple other picks that I may even like even better in terms of value on the board over at FanDuel Sportsbook. But you know what? Speaking of today's board, let's talk about PrizePicks really quick, because there's some really interesting selections over there that you can get into as well. And PrizePicks is indeed the easiest way to play daily fantasy sports in North America. You simply take more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings potentially roll in. And I got to say, the most interesting 2 numbers I've seen so far, there's a whole bunch of them out there, of course, at PrizePicks on today's board. But to me, I like Travion Henderson, the Ohio State running back, for less than 110 rushing yards. And also Devin Brown has more projected for more than Brady Cook in terms of passing yards too. I just can't quite see that. So let's go less than on both Travion Henderson's rushing yards and Devin Brown's passing yards. I just think that that's a little bit high, both of those numbers, simply put. So I like the value there. But regardless of where you think the value is always at prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege, and always use the promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Well, if I like Missouri at 5.5, and I like, as I mess with my headphones here, excuse me, if I like Missouri as a 5.5 point underdog, it's safe to say that I probably like the Tigers as the money line player too. And generally, I will take the money line in that type of situation where I think the game is maybe slightly mispriced, where I think this is basically a coin flip kind of ball game. So if you're going to give me $17.20 plus 172 on a $10 bet, well, I'm going to take those odds over just hoping that Missouri covers a fairly arbitrary 5.5 points. That's one of the things I generally like to bet the money line, although over the years, I hate to say it, people like FanDuel Sportsbook and their competitors have taken a lot of the value away, in my opinion, of those bets. But to me, plus 172 here in a game that I think Missouri has a 50-50 shot at winning, that's easy math to do there, right? There's value there in that proposition, in my opinion. But also, as I think about this game and as I see the total creep up to now 50.5, it was just a day ago, I believe it was 48.5. So again, a couple points there pretty darn significant move there. And I just don't know that there's been a lot of changes in actual knowledge over the last couple days here. Again, you might think that type of movement, along with the 2 points in the spread over the last day or so, the 2 points in the total, all of this would make a person think, gee, kind of seems like they're telling us that Marvin Harrison Jr. might actually play in this game. Again, I'm just going to say I'll be really surprised if that happens. Maybe I'm going to end up looking completely stupid here. News will probably break on Twitter, as it usually does, as soon as I post my podcast that he'll play or something. Well, if that's the case, fine and dandy, then I'll admit that I'm wrong. Even if he does play, though, again, a new quarterback, can he get him the football? And also, with the way I see Missouri hopefully having success on the ground in this game and leaning on that rushing attack with Cody Schrader, I see the chains moving a decent bit. I see the clock moving a decent bit. I don't think Missouri's going to be in hyper speed or anything offensively. So if anything, I think that'll kind of come down here a little bit as far as the total at the end of the day. I shouldn't say the total over at FanDuel Sportsbook will come down. I just think that the finals total in the actual ball game is going to be less than 50.5. That's just how I see this playing out. I think both defenses will have a relatively high amount of success tonight. And finally, it will be interesting to see how heavily of a Missouri crowd this is. It really does seem like it's going to be a majority Missouri crowd. Will they be able to make enough noise to make a difference in AT&T Stadium? I don't know. We'll see. If they do, that'll be really interesting and a really fun thing to see, no doubt about that. But it does seem like, by all indications, that there's going to be significantly more Missouri fans than Ohio State fans. And hey, just a freebie for my friends over at Game Time there, looking at their app, Cotton Bowl Classic. If you happen to be down there, want to get in at the last second, $95, your cheapest ticket. So that says game day here. If people are still holding that strong on their prices, gonna be a good crowd tonight, no doubt about that. So I got to be honest, I'm jealous to all of you who made it down to Dallas. My buddy Alex Onafrio reached out to me just now as I was recording the show, wondering if I was in Dallas. Oh, I wish, buddy. I really, really wish. But hey, hope you all have a good time. If you're down here in Dallas, if you're like me here in Columbia or Missouri, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world checking out the game, hey, I think we're going to have a great time tonight. Hopefully it'll be a nice Missouri victory to celebrate. And obviously I will be back ASAP, probably Saturday morning, realistically. The game's going to be over, at 10:30 or so by the time I turn around the show. It'll be practically midnight. I'll probably be exhausted. Let's shoot for Saturday morning. How about that? And I'll have a recap of whatever happens in the Cotton Bowl. So I'll see you next time right here on Locked On Mizzou.